At any given second, the cells inside your body are sending and receiving more messages than every smartphone on the planet combined. They tell each other when to grow, when to divide, when to die, when to make insulin, when to fire a nerve impulse, and when to attack an invader. AP Biology Unit 4 calls this entire system cell communication, and the exam is testing whether you can trace a signal from the cell that sent it to the response inside the cell that received it. Cell communication is the process by which one cell sends a signal, another cell detects that signal using a receptor, and the receiving cell produces a response that changes its behavior. The signal can be a hormone, a neurotransmitter, a growth factor, or even direct physical contact. The graders will rarely ask you to define the word, but they will absolutely ask you to follow the chain from signal to receptor to response on every Unit 4 free response question. Here is the single most important concept on this topic. Out of trillions of cells in your body, only a specific subset will respond to any given signal, and the reason comes down to receptors. A cell with the matching receptor protein is called a target cell, and it can detect and respond to the signal. Cells without that receptor cannot hear it at all. Insulin floats past your liver cells and tells them to absorb glucose, but the same insulin molecules drift past hair follicle cells with no response, because those cells never built insulin receptors. AP graders test 4 major signaling types, and you should be able to name them by distance. Direct contact happens when 2 cells physically touch, often through gap junctions or membrane proteins, and this is how immune cells coordinate attacks. Local signaling, called paracrine, lets nearby cells communicate through diffuse signals over short distances. Long-distance signaling uses hormones that travel through the bloodstream to reach distant tissues. Synaptic signaling fires neurotransmitters across the tiny gap between neurons. When the prompt mentions distance, name the matching type. Every signaling pathway in the body follows the same 3-step structure, and memorizing it pays off on the FRQ. Step 1 is reception, where the signal binds to its receptor on the target cell. Step 2 is transduction, where the receptor relays and often amplifies the message through a chain of proteins inside the cell. Step 3 is response, where the cell actually changes its behavior, whether by altering enzyme activity, changing gene expression, secreting a product, or moving. Reception, transduction, response. 3 words, every signal. The AP exam loves to ask what happens when one step in the pathway fails, because the answer reveals whether you understand cause and effect, or just memorize vocabulary. If the receptor is missing or blocked, the signal cannot bind, and the cell ignores the message entirely. If the receptor works but a transduction protein is broken, the signal binds, but the message never reaches the response machinery. If transduction works, but the final response gene or enzyme is disrupted, the cell receives the message but cannot act on it. Cancer often involves exactly this kind of communication breakdown. The cleanest example to cite on a cell communication FRQ is immune signaling. When a pathogen enters your body, infected cells release chemical signals called cytokines that diffuse to nearby immune cells. Immune cells with matching receptors detect those cytokines, trigger transduction pathways inside themselves, and respond by multiplying, migrating to the infection site, and producing more signals. One signal, one receptor, one pathway, one coordinated response across millions of cells. The 4-part move on any cell communication-free response is always the same structure. Name the signal that one cell is sending. Identify the receptor and the target cell that can detect it. Explain a pathway step, whether reception, transduction, or response. Predict the consequence inside the cell, or what fails if a mutation breaks one step. Hit those 4 pieces in order, and you earn the complete rubric on every Unit 4 signaling question the College Board can write.
You can drill 24 flashcards and 8 AP-style practice questions on cell communication in under 15 minutes using the link below. That is the difference between a 3 and a 5. Subscribe for new AP videos every week.